This film itself has taught me so many lessons in vulnerability. For years, I was doing PR. It was my comfort zone. I was the expert. I was the person that brands and people came to when they needed advice or counsel. Now, as a new filmmaker, that's a whole new animal. It's like a whole new lane. And I had to go into this knowing that there were going to be times where I had to lean on and lean into this team that I built.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 195. This episode is brought to you by Layfield Resume Consulting, a career coaching and resume writing firm that specializes in empowering job seekers. Whether you're looking for a new job, seeking opportunities for growth, or considering transitioning careers, Layfield Resume Consulting can help. Visit dreamsanddrive.com/Layfield, LAYFIELD, for a free 30-minute consultation and start your journey towards getting your professional profiles and documents in order. So today we are chatting with Renae Bluitt, who is a Brooklyn-based digital content creator, filmmaker, and PR strategist. Renae, I would describe her as someone who is a student and a curator of the Black woman's narrative, which is a passion that she recently channeled into her first film, She Did That. The documentary uncovers why and how Black women are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in America. I hope you all enjoy as Renae shares the many legs of her dream driving journey and gives us an insight into how she was able to evolve her career and also the many challenges she had to navigate along the way. She's going to give us tips on how to chart a career that you love, the power of mentorship and collaboration, how to execute with intention, and how to ignite your inner flame and pursue your passions but also make a living from them. If you enjoy it, I ask that you please share with a friend. Remember, we are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. Post this to Instagram, post it to your Instagram stories, send it to a friend via text. I love it when you guys share, and it helps us grow the Dreams and Drive community. Don't forget, if you want to get some Dreams and Drive gear, we do have a limited quantity of Dreams and Drive crew necks and hoodies available. Just visit dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, let's get to this episode.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. I feel like we've crossed paths so many times before. I think you were helping me when we had our past guest. Was it Jasmine of Eden Body Works? And I was like, yes. Oh, yes, and you've been somebody who's been on my radar. So I always get so excited when I get to interview my social media PR girl crushes.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been watching the work that you're doing with Dreams and Drive, and I knew that this was a space that I wanted to visit to talk about what I'm up to these days.
So let's get started going back in time, Renae. I love asking our guests, who they were as children. If I had to say, who was the 10-year-old Renae and what were you up to? How would you answer that?
At 10, I was a new big sister. My sister and I are 9 years apart. So at 10, I was kind of like being mom to my little sister, but also just embracing her as my little baby doll. I have always been really particular about clothes and hair and things like that. So at 10, I also thought that I was, practicing on my Barbie dolls and practicing on my Barbie doll head to be a hairstylist. I really thought that at some point I was going to be a hairstylist. So I was practicing on my sister's hair, practicing on my hair. And I was just really girly at the age of 10. I was living in a little bitty town outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, called Kokomo, Indiana. Not very diverse, but that was the community that we lived in. So I was one of very few brown girls in my classes. In fact, the only in most of my classes up to 6th grade. So That's kind of me in a nutshell at 10, being a new big sister and thinking I was preparing to like be this hairstylist when I grew up.
Isn't it interesting looking back now and how you are a creator now, and even back then you had these seeds of wanting to create and wanting to design.
Yes.
I always think it's interesting when we go back. When I was a kid, I wanted to be, I don't want to say I wanted to be, I was part of a girl group, but I couldn't sing. So I was like the songwriter, my other friend Samantha, she was the actual singer, and we used to have these backyard concerts. But it's funny because looking back, I was that producer. I had I could help figure out how to make the idea happen. So it's really good to reflect. So moving through young adulthood, what was that dream for you?
So by the time I was in high school, we had relocated to Champaign, Illinois, which is a mid-sized town in central Illinois. My mother relocated there to work for University of Illinois. And I was still into the hair thing. And this time I was taking it beyond my little sister. Like, of course, she was still a quote unquote client, but then I was doing like my girlfriend's hair in school and possibly aging myself. But like back then it was all about, shaving your hair and the asymmetrical styles and, everything that was, so big in the 80s. I was doing that, like, thought that I was really, again, still going to be a hairstylist, but I was also getting into writing. Like, I really enjoyed, the classes where I had to do a lot of writing. I enjoyed telling stories. I was the little girl in class or the young lady in class that was always talking because I guess I was interviewing people and didn't even realize it. I was on the dance squad and just really kind of a social butterfly. But I loved talking to people and kind of getting into their stories without even realizing what it was. At that age, it was probably just, oh, she's a little chatty, she has all these friends. But I just really enjoyed finding out, what made people tick.
So did you ever see that manifesting into some type of career? Because I'm sure at that point, people were probably pushing on you the idea of figuring out what you wanted to be when you grew up.
You know what? It was not until college that I started to think about, how this could translate into a career. When I was in high school, I was really just enjoying myself. And I'm glad that, my parents weren't putting that pressure on me. My dad, when I was growing up, my dad was, and he still is, an entrepreneur. So he and my grandfather were my first examples of Black-owned businesses in our community. And so through seeing, my dad work hard and, provide for his family through his own business, early on, that seed was planted in my mind that it was possible, right? So when I was in high school and I was thinking about being a hairstylist, I wasn't thinking about, just having a chair in someone's salon. I imagined that I would have my own salon one day.
What kind of business did your dad have?
Oh, very interesting. My dad is a funeral director.
You know what? That's so crazy that you say that, because when I was younger, I was fascinated with funeral homes. And I know that sounds very morbid, but if you think about it, right, it's like, it's a business that will never go out of, will never go out of business.
Yeah. And that was, so my grandfather was a funeral director and owned a funeral home in Kokomo, Indiana, back in the day when it was almost unheard of for a Black man to be providing for his own family. And that's very much a family business. Usually when people are funeral directors, the first thing that I want to know is like, who in your family was doing this before you? So my dad took on the family business. And so there's a lot of things that came out of that, one being the daughter of a funeral director. I mean, people are transitioning 24/7. So my dad didn't have the traditional 9 to 5. My parents divorced when I was about in 6th grade, but we still had a close relationship. And I learned early on, the hard work and sacrifice that goes into entrepreneurship. I learned early on the highs and lows of it. there were times with us where Christmas would be extravagant, and there were times when Christmas was lean, based on what was going on with the family business. So without realizing it, I got a real blueprint for entrepreneurship early on. And of course, as you can expect, there was a lot of pressure from my family to get into the family business, take over the family business when I was able to, but it just wasn't of interest to me. And it wasn't so much that I was afraid of, being in that business, but I knew that to me, it's like a calling, right? It's like a ministry. You can't be consoling people in their darkest hour if you're not really passionate about it and not really into it, which I was not. So I was able to get out of that.
Do you remember how that conversation went? Because I think there might be people listening in who, they're being not pressured, but they're being, kind of influenced to consider options that they're not really feeling in their heart. Like, how did you navigate and get the confidence and courage to just say, hey, I want to do my own thing?
Yeah, I think I may have been a little lucky because, saying that you don't want to be a funeral director or a mortician is, people understand that. Yeah. I still got a lot of pressure though, because my dad would remind me how few, if like he would remind me, like, look around at your friends, how many of them have a business in their family, and a thriving business in their family? Like, are you going to let this opportunity pass you up? He didn't have any sons, and that was also a lot of pressure because usually it's a male dominated industry. So usually it's the son that would take over that business. But I don't know where I got the confidence from. I was just very clear. Like, I am not interested in this work. Like, and I think that me saying that I wasn't interested, I think that he thought that I was young and I would change my mind. Mm-hmm. So the pressure continued throughout college, even post-college, that time when you graduate and, you're trying to figure out what's next. Are you going to do an internship? Are you going to hold out for a job? The pressure got a little heavier around that time because I was vulnerable, right? Like, here I am trying to figure out what's next. And there's this family business right up under my nose. So I just really stood by the fact that this wasn't for me. And as I got into my career doing PR, I lived in Chicago and I was working for one of the top PR and ad agencies in the country, one of the top Black-owned ad and PR agencies in the country at the time. He started to see how much I enjoyed the work that I was doing and how much pride I took in, the projects that I was working on and how much time I invested above and beyond, 9 to 5. And he finally got it. I invited him to like events that I was working on with my team, and he got it. And what he did tell me was that, you know what, Renae, when it's all said and done, I want you to do what you really love and enjoy, because he understood the gratification that came from that feeling, and he wanted me to experience it. He was able to let go and let me experience that in an industry that wasn't, the family-owned business. It wasn't easy, but I'm really glad that I stood my ground, because there's nothing worse than getting up every single day and doing something that you're not moved by, or that doesn't make you feel alive, No,
that is so true. And I think there's such great strength in the journey that you go through when you kind of assert yourself and you say, all right, I have to stick up for myself, because you would be really living inauthentic. Imagine if you were Renae, right? Renae Bluitt, the funeral director.
Oh, God.
It just doesn't sound right.
I cannot imagine it.
And you could have been good at it, right? You probably would have the tools and resources to be good at it, but you would not be, it wouldn't be you.
No, it wouldn't be me. I would probably end up being miserable. And, one of the things that he tried to convinced me on, was the fact that in that business, you're dealing not only like the spiritual side and the service side of it, right? Because we all want to be of service, but he also would joke around and say that, you need to be worried about the people who are alive, like the people who aren't alive, they aren't a threat to you. But we got past that. And I'm really glad that I stood my ground. But the one thing that I will say that I took away from being raised in that environment was the fact that I got to see almost every day people coming in and, celebrating the lives of their loved ones who are no longer here. Mm-hmm. And I learned early on how short and how, fleeting life is and how important it is to like do what you love and do things that you feel good about and do things with intention and really make the most out of your time here. So I think I have just a different appreciation for life just from seeing so much, of the opposite of that growing up.
I think that's a very, very important perspective to have because there are people who sometimes it takes, I guess, personal tragedies for them to realize that, how you ever heard the story of, I was about to, people who get into car crashes and they see their life flash before them and they have that epiphany moment. So it's good that you didn't necessarily, you may have in other areas of your life, but growing up, you were able to see that appreciation for living the life here and the now. So let's talk a little bit about doing what you love and gaining clarity around your personal mission, your personal vision. At what point during your early career did you start realizing that you had an interest and a knack for publicity and PR?
My very first job out of college, Chicago Advertising Federation, my boss was this awesome middle-aged white woman who was like 4'0" but like a powerhouse. And I worked with her and, if I'm honest, I took that job to get to Chicago. It was like my foot in the door because I knew I wanted to be in that market. And I was an admin assistant or something like an administrative role, kind of a coordinator. And because it was a nonprofit organization and a small one with a lean staff, she allowed me to really tap into the things that I enjoyed and things that I was good at. So I was writing for the organization's newsletter. We would have like these galas and fundraisers, and she would allow me to help and eventually take the lead on some of the event planning. Maybe like a year and a half in, I was enjoying the work that I was doing, but she really, she called me into her office and she was like, "Have you been thinking about what's next?" And, looking back on that, I think that was just beautiful and huge of her because she could have, I was enjoying the work that I was doing and she could have kind of stepped back and allowed me to enjoy that and rode that out for a little while longer. But she was really invested in me as a person and wanted to see my career thrive. And so a year and a half in, it's like, I don't want you to get comfortable here. Let's think about what your next step could be in your career. And so I wasn't sure of what's next. I thought that I wanted to do like advertising, but she's the one who kind of steered me in the direction of PR. She was like, "Look, you're a great writer. You enjoy working with people. You enjoy creating experiences. You do a great job working on these events. This is, these are the things that would create a successful PR career." And so she connected me with different people in the industry there in Chicago. I had, sit down meetings with people and I realized like, this is what I want to do. Like, and this is what I've been doing, but like just not with the title and not in a PR agency. So that led me to my first real PR job. And that was at Burrell Communications Group. And I got to work on some amazing accounts, Sprite, Coca-Cola, Kraft Foods, Citibank, all these brands that were committed to connecting to African-American consumers and specifically women because we're the head of the household. So I got a taste of that early on, and I knew that I wanted to do work that was benefiting my community. and I loved it. Like, the work that I did just felt really good back then, and it still does. So I would say that I'm blessed to have figured it out early, or at least blessed to have been able to do work early on in my career that I really enjoyed. Because I know it takes a long time to get to that point. And there are people who are still looking for that purpose in their work. So I don't take that blessing lightly.
You being able to work on with such big clients and such big campaigns, you probably realized that there was this power in the work that you were doing.
When I was working on brands like Coca-Cola, Sprite, McDonald's, like all these huge brands, it was harder to see how we were moving the needle because they had so many other, things in place, from advertising. These are global brands. So honestly, it wasn't until I started my own consultancy, working with smaller businesses, working with startups, and mid-sized brands, that I got to really see, outside of a client saying great event or a great campaign. It wasn't until I started working with smaller brands that I really got to see how the work that I was doing moved the needle. And that was a game changer for me. Like, to see, to know that you're working with, and we'll throw out, Eden Body Works as an example, to know that you're working with a young Black woman who decided to create a hair care brand because of, what she saw that was missing in the industry and her personal needs, and to really help that brand grow and move the needle for that brand. That kind of work felt good, which is why when I started my consultancy, I made the commitment to say, like, my specialty is beauty and my specialty is Black women-owned brands. And, I had a lot of peers and even mentors who were like, are you sure you want this to be your focus? Because saying that this is your specialty could close the door for other opportunities. And, to be quite honest, opportunities that may have larger budgets, but there's really no dollar sign that you could put next to how great it feels to know that you're helping another Black woman realize her dreams, another Black woman provide for her family, and another Black woman really just blaze trails in an industry like beauty that is servicing so many Black women. It feels good to have been working with brands that were for Black women and by Black women.
So let's talk about that personal dreams and drive moment for you, where you launched your consultancy, I guess, which later turned into Crush Media, right?
Yes.
So how did that come about? And what were your thoughts just saying, hey, I'm going to take a chance on myself and see if I could do my own thing?
So prior to launching my business, I was in New York. I think the last agency job that I mentioned was in Chicago. So I moved to New York. And I was working with a global PR agency here on the multicultural team, though. So I was still kind of in that, specialty area of working with brands that are targeting, the Black community, but within a general market agency. I was there for a couple years, and I realized that, okay, I was hitting a point in my career where the clients and the type of projects that I was being assigned weren't exactly exciting to me. I was working on a lot of pharmaceutical, and it became a little depressing to write about and be pitching stories to the media about, these pharmaceutical brands and these meds that are for, illnesses that index high in our community, like a glaucoma or diabetes. That got depressing. And so an opportunity came up for me to work with a friend of mine who was the head of marketing for a hair care brand, an iconic hair care brand that was like relaunching. And together we relaunched the brand, worked on the men's launch of the brand. And that was around the time that the natural hair space was taking off, like around 2007, 8, 9. I got a chance to work on brands that were really they were behind the natural hair care revolution. We were doing events and meetups for women who were newly natural and who wanted to connect with other women who were also going natural. Now you could look around a room, especially in major cities like in New York or Chicago, LA, and most of the women in the room are natural. But back in like 2008, 2009, that wasn't the case. And I just had such a great time as a natural myself. I really had fun creating these experiences for other women who were natural, who wanted to connect with other women, but also identify hair care products to really support them on their journey, and, products that had, natural and healthy ingredients. That was a fun time. It was literally like being paid to produce events for your friends, because all of my friends were natural at the time.
And you were the market. You were like, you didn't have to necessarily do too much outside market research, right?
No, I was the target. My friends were the target, and it was just a good time. And I would say that, the natural hair space has changed a lot in the last, 9-10 years. You have a lot of general market brands that are now creating products to speak directly to this audience. But back then, that wasn't the case. And there were only a handful of products on the market. Now, of course, that space is heavily saturated. But there was a sense of community that we were building and creating for Black women that just really felt good. It felt like sisterhood through branding. And it just really brought a lot of gratification to the work. It was a lot of long hours. PR is one of those jobs that, you're investing a lot of time in it, and it could be thankless sometimes. But in these cases where I was creating experiences for Black women, working with brands that were by Black women and for Black women, it just felt amazing.
All right, guys, quick break from our episode, but I want to talk about something that a lot of us dream drivers, especially ones who haven't yet made the full-time leap into entrepreneurship, something we're still navigating. Jobs, resumes, career transitions, all of that. Do you ever feel like once you submit a job application, your resume goes into a black hole? Or have you ever wondered why you never heard back about a job that you knew you were qualified for? Well, before your resume is even seen by a recruiter, it often has to get past the applicant tracking software, which is a system that scans your resume for keywords and phrases. Over 70% of companies use them, and they can land you in the no pile, even if you are the most qualified candidate. So you have to make sure you're optimizing for the right things. So if your resume does make its way into the hands of a recruiter, you only have 6 seconds to impress them, or they won't fully read it. If you are looking for ways that you can overcome these barriers, a free consultation with Tristan over at Layfield Resume Consulting can definitely help. With his thorough intake calls and unique formats, Tristan can assist you in catching the attention of recruiters and also ensuring that your experiences are adequately sold to elevate you as the best candidate for the job. You'll also learn strategies to frame your experiences and how to tailor your resume for various applications. So, all right, to book your free consultation, it's a free 30-minute consultation, guys. Don't miss out on this. Go to dreamsanddrive.com/Layfield. That's dreamsanddrive.com/LAYFIELD. You can also use the code DID15 for 15% off any service at layfieldresume.com. And listen, if you know you need to get your resume looked over and you've been procrastinating, you've been saying, I'm going to do it tomorrow, I'm going to do it next year, whatever, please don't do that. Sign up for a resume consultation with Tristan. Plus, it's free, guys. There's no excuse. What would you say to that person to really set yourself apart? What do you really have to make sure that you're doing, especially if you're entering an industry that may be a bit, saturated?
Right. Well, for one, I would say, and it is as simple as it may sound, it's like the best advice that I would give anyone: do the work. Mm-hmm. I think that, we live in a time now, especially with social media, where so many people are focused on talking about doing the work and looking like they're doing the work, but they're not actually doing the work. And that's one thing I could say about back then. We were on Facebook, then Twitter came along, but there wasn't as much focus on social media, and there was more focus on like real life experiences, whether it's through events or, whatever you were doing to connect with that consumer. But do the work. I think that the way that we navigate in our daily lives and our careers is very specific to us and who we are as people and who we are as women. So yes, for example, there may be, or there may have been, plenty of other women who were doing PR and focusing on Black women-owned brands, but those people weren't Renae Bluitt, and vice versa. I weren't them. I'm not who they are. So bringing your own brand of excellence to your work is what will always set you apart, no matter what industry you're in.
Did you ever doubt yourself along this journey?
You know what? It wasn't so much of doubting myself as much as it may have been doubting my reach, for example, like doubting my ability to keep this going. Like when you're an entrepreneur, you may have some years, some months, some quarters, some weeks that are really profitable. And you may look up and, things may change. A client's budget may get slashed. And usually PR is one of the first things to go because
which doesn't make sense, right? It's like you need them. Anyway, sorry.
So crazy. No, it's one of like PR, marketing events. These are things that some brands see as like a luxury, out of pocket expense, when, as we both know, it's a must have. So, I sometimes doubted my ability to keep this going. And I doubted my ability to create a business that was sustainable. I'm living in New York, one of the most expensive markets in the country. It was the time when Brooklyn was really starting to get on the map, and Brooklyn is a whole different place now, but gentrification was happening. My community was getting more expensive to live in. Single income household. My family wasn't here in New York. I think I had a lot of pressure that some people didn't have, whether it was because they were married or because they had family here and kind of this cushion. But I felt like I had to be winning all the time, or at least, my business had to be in a good place all the time because I have to survive here in this city that is bringing me so many opportunities.
And that's so understandable. And I feel like that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs, that's a part of their journey that they go through. But how did you not give up then? Because you had these feelings, but what was that thing that kept you going?
The thing that kept me going was really the thought of going back to being, because there is a taste of freedom that you get with entrepreneurship that in itself is inspiration to keep going. Like, I'm a free spirit. I like being able to, manage my schedule, decide when I'm going to do things. If on any given Wednesday, I decide that I want to take a day off, I can plan my week around that. And so, and this also goes back to being raised, by a parent who's an entrepreneur. You get to see the benefits of entrepreneurship. So just the mere thought of going back to work for someone was enough to like really push me to keep going. And then being in New York, specifically in Brooklyn, being surrounded by so many entrepreneurs and self-starters and artists, that was inspiration too. Like, I have friends who joke, or like I have a friend who, works in the education system, and he always jokes around like, Renae, do any of your friends have jobs? Like, or an entrepreneur? And it was the norm for me. And, I have this community and tribe, if you will, of entrepreneurs around me. And so for me, and I know that this isn't, common for a lot of people, but in New York and in Brooklyn specifically, when I look around at my friends, we are mostly creators. and producers of experiences, creators of, jewelry, clothing, it was normal for me to look around and see examples of other entrepreneurs who were building their brands and doing their things. Now, if I was surrounded by more people with 9-to-5s, I could totally see how those hard times during entrepreneurship would look, extremely daunting. And I could totally see how, going back into a corporate or agency environment would seem appealing, because that would have been, what I was surrounded by. But that wasn't the case.
It is real. I'm telling you, because so I quit my job in August to focus on Dreams and Drive and just focus on like my entrepreneurial endeavors. But girl, listen, this morning, I kid you not, listeners, this morning at around 9:00, I was in a whole crying fit in my basement on the couch, like, what am I doing with my life? Right? Oh, yeah. It was one of those moments where you're just thinking about, did I make the right choice? Right? That's something that I was thinking about this morning. So I had to call one of my friends. And he was like, listen, you got this. People are listening to Dreams and Drive. You're impacting people. Like, you got to get up and just get to work. So I got up, right? I started preparing for the interview. I started, just going online and doing different things that I had to do. And it was just the action of me doing it, as you were saying, doing the work, and just remembering that you didn't like what you left, right? And you like this life that you're living now. So it is so real. And I think it's something that there's going to be ebbs and flows with everything. Because even if you had the job or a full-time job, you might even say, hey, do I want this? Right? So there's always this balance that you have to play. But I like what you talked about, mentioning your tribe. And I think New York City is a beautiful place. And I think people who aren't from the area don't understand just the energy that is New York City. Yeah. But what tips would you have to that person who's having difficulty cultivating or nurturing their tribe, whether they're like in some isolated town in Mississippi somewhere, like, if you don't feel like you have a strong network, what are some tips you'd have to that person to build one?
It's not easy finding your tribe, because, honestly, just because someone is in entrepreneurship doesn't mean that qualifies them to be a part of your tribe, because there are other things that you want to connect with these people on too. I'm trying to think how I kind of came to New York from Chicago with kind of a built-in network or foundation, if you will. But find, whatever your industry is, start going to, become a member of organizations that are supporting your industry. You could find people there. I think social media is, as much as we may talk about some of the ways that social media is like smoke and mirrors, and it can be a distraction for your work, it's really a huge, endless opportunity to connect with other people, other like-minded people, other people that can really help you grow as an entrepreneur. I've met so many amazing people on social. And I think the real key is, with us doing so much scrolling and so much, connecting, and I'm doing this in air quotes because after a while when it's on social media, it's like, are you really connecting or are you just texting? But be diligent about taking those conversations offline and meeting up with people, and not just on the like, hey, I'd like to pick your brain, because we know that that's tired and, time is money and people are, juggling a lot, but just to connect with people, and not just people that you're looking up to, so to speak, that you think could help to enhance your career in some way, but even peers, even like the lateral networking is important. And think about, one of the things we talk about in the film, which I know we'll get to later, is this, the power of collaboration over competition. Think about people in your space that you could collaborate with, people that you could partner with to elevate what you're doing and elevate what they're doing, so that the connection and the relationship is mutually beneficial. Because a lot of times, when you're when you have a presence on social media, you get a lot of DMs and messages about people who want to pick your brain and, get advice from you. And I always tell people, like, if you approach, especially a stranger, if you're approaching a stranger with your hand out, looking for like this transactional relationship, how authentic is it?
Yep.
And let's challenge ourselves to think about how we can help that person too. What's in it for this person outside of the service side of it? What can you do to help this person? Like, we all have so many talents and so many resources that I think we should look at as assets that we could share with other people in our community so that we can all grow and all thrive and all be successful.
So let's talk about She Did That.
Yes.
How did that film idea come to be? Because, you were working as a publicist, a writer, you had In Her Shoes blog. When did a producer, how did that get added to the resume?
Well, first, let me just start by saying, like, all glory to God. Like, he's the one who planted the seed. He's the one who gave me the audacity to think that, I had what it took to be a first-time filmmaker. So you mentioned In Her Shoes. That's my baby. That's the blog that I have been managing for 10 years now. The blog just turned 10 at the top of January. And for 10 years, I've basically been writing this love letter to Black women entrepreneurs. I've been interviewing women who were just starting their brands, all the way to women like Elisa Price, who've been in the business now for 25 years. That blog literally was a game changer and is a game changer for me because it really gave me an up close and personal look at what it really takes to build a brand. So, like, the sacrifices that are made, the doubt that we have, like, even when we look super confident, trust me, there is always a moment of doubt, and there will be moments of doubt. Like the time that you said you had this morning, in tears and worried about, your business and what's next. Those moments are as natural as breathing if you're an entrepreneur. And I've learned to, I'm not going to say not take those moments so seriously, but I've learned to allow myself to go through those moments. Be gentle with yourself. This is not an easy road that we're on. It takes a lot to know that, you are solely responsible for, making your money. Like, you eat what you kill. And that's a lot of pressure for one person, especially in a city like New York, especially as a Black woman who may not, be getting the same opportunities and the same budgets and the same doors opening for us as our counterparts. So through the blog, I was able to just tap into all of these successful women. Like, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of women, like, in the last 10 years. And in 2015, prior to that, I had been doing like a series of panel events called The Beauties and Brains Behind the Brands. In 2015, I decided I didn't want to do a traditional panel. I wanted to do something else to celebrate these Black women entrepreneurs. So I partnered with a photographer friend of mine, Alzo Slade, and we went around New York City and photographed 25 women in their element. So, like, at the time, this woman, Trisha Lee, had a nail bar here in Brooklyn called Polish Bar of Brooklyn. We photographed Demetria Lucas, we photographed her on the Brooklyn Bridge because at the time her brand was Abel in Brooklyn. We just photographed different women in their spaces, in their offices, or wherever they create their magic. And through these photographs, we were able to kind of look into the heart and soul of these women. And, I interviewed each one, and we did a photography exhibition in Dumbo. And it was just a beautiful event. We had, these large printouts of each image, and we just invited people to come and just take in these images and take in, like on the side of each image, we had like a bio and a description of this woman and her business and what fueled her. That event was amazing. Like, I was proud of myself for thinking out the box. From what I know, no one else had done something like that specifically for Black women entrepreneurs. Of course, there are photography exhibitions all the time with, people as subjects, but specifically Black female entrepreneurs, no one else had done it. And I was really proud of myself for doing that. But the night of the event, as we're packing up and like getting ready to leave, I'm on this high. A woman who was there, I'll never forget her face. She was like, "So what's next?" And I was like, "Woo!" Like, wow! Like I haven't even taken my shoes off from this experience, and someone is asking me what's next. And so that question alone really made me think about like, what is next? Like you could do another photography exhibition with another group of women, but do you want to do the same thing again? And like, what is the next medium that you can use to explore, the idea of Black women entrepreneurs and Black women building brands and legacies? It wasn't until like a few months after that event that, God planted this seed in my mind. Like, what are the other platforms that you haven't explored? What are the other mediums? And the first thing that came to mind was film. Prior to that, I had been doing some film interviews, going into different businesses and talking to women, but to actually do create a larger body of work and, create it with a little more intention and creativity and love poured into it was a whole different animal. But when I took on the idea of creating a documentary, you know how they say ignorance is a bliss?
Mm-hmm. You don't know what you're getting into. Because you think of film, like it's a film. It's not just a YouTube video, right? It's a film.
My gosh. It was such a huge undertaking, and there was so much that I didn't know. I just knew that I wanted to tell these stories in a beautiful way. And this is how you know that like your steps are ordained. Like I look at, my career and my life as like this puzzle, and each thing that I'm doing is like adding to the puzzle of like the bigger picture. So through the relationships that I had built from, all these years of doing PR, I knew how to pitch the film for brand partnerships. Like I knew how to create those decks. I knew what, would intrigue a brand or make a brand interested in aligning with this film. So I was able to get Essence on board as a partner. They were the first partner. I was able to get General Motors on board as an early partner, as our official automotive partner. And so their funding really helped to get the film off the ground, which for a lot of filmmakers, funding is the roadblock. It's like we have all these great ideas, but it costs a lot to execute it. I learned so much about, the cameras that we have to use and the lighting and just, the editing and like all these things that are costly. We started filming this is 19, now it's starting to feel like a blur. We started filming in 2016.
What was your initial vision though? Like, did you wanted to capture, but did you have did you know how long you wanted to be? Did you know who you wanted to reach out to? Did you have the blueprint for the film? Or was it something that developed as you went along?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. I had an idea for how I wanted to tell these stories, because one of my main goals and objectives was to give people a real behind the scenes look at how some of the women that we admire and look up to and brands that we support, how did they get to this place? How did she do that? Which is how, I came about the title. Of course, she did that is something that we say in our community and we know what it means. But for the film, it's like affirming that she did that. And through the film, we're showing you how she did it. The sacrifices that were made, whether it was personally or professionally or financially, the roadblocks that she had to overcome. one thing that was interesting is that we got into the personal lives, right? Because we are so busy, we're thinking about, when you think about Black women entrepreneurs and how they get to where they are, we think about, what they're doing business wise, but life is still happening while you're building brands, and there were some tragic things that happened to one of the women while we were filming, and we had to go back and talk to her. So I did have like a blueprint for how I wanted to tell the stories, but it's not until you get into these conversations that you really can guide and mold the direction of the film. And then you talk to these different women and you realize that there are some common threads and common, subjects that each of these women are talking about and common obstacles that these women are facing. And so you kind of build your chapters around that. So to answer your question, there was a blueprint, but it was fluid. Like I was able to kind of move and change things and rearrange things as we were filming, as we were continuing to have these conversations. Because, the biggest lesson that I learned through the production of this film was not just about being a documentarian. It was about life, which is that you can plan all you want. It may not happen, the way that you thought it would. You know how we talk about you make plans and God laughs at them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that happened with the film. God laughed at me when I told my team, like, okay, we're going to start filming on this date and we're going to premiere the film on this day. Like I kind of looked at it as like a client campaign.
You made a project plan, like, September 1st is going to be the pre-production and by this day it'll be released.
Bye. Like, girl, bye.
So talk us through that. Like, how did that play out?
The whole timeline thing, it's of course you need the timeline and you need these parameters to work around. But the life lesson that I learned is that you have to be able to be flexible and trust that whatever is happening, that may be stopping you from doing things according to this timeline that you create is happening for the betterment of the project. Like there were situations that, interviews that we thought we had in place, opportunities for filming that we thought we had in place that fell through, and you would be hurt and, just disappointed because you were really looking forward to it or kind of emotionally connected to the idea of this happening, but you have to let it go. And things don't always happen the way you think they're going to happen. But the biggest lesson that I learned on this project, which is actually like a life lesson for me, is that whenever things seemed to be falling apart, they were really coming together. And, there are some mishaps and things that happened while we were filming. That there was one situation where there was some footage that was damaged, and we had to go back in and speak to a set of entrepreneurs again. And when I tell you that this second interview with them was just so much more impactful, I think, than the first conversation, and then what had transpired in their lives since we last spoke really made for a really special moment in the film that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So yeah, whenever things seem to be falling apart in life, in work, in anything we're doing, it's really coming together, and you just have to trust the journey.
One of the things that I really admire about the whole rollout and just seeing it really literally unfold on social media and just seeing how this film became your baby, Renae. Like you had this, like this film was everywhere. You guys had the sneak peek at Essence. You were doing viewings across the country. What was your approach to the rollout and distribution and getting as many eyes as possible to view She Did That?
First of all, we had a stellar, like the film has not even been out a year. And to your point, like to be able to have the world premiere of this film at the largest gathering of Black women in the world, which is Essence Festival, is a huge blessing. I mean, we were, and I just posted this recently, we were on signage and billing that included films like If Beale Street Could Talk. Like this is me as a first-time filmmaker. My film is premiering at like 2:00 and it's followed by If Bill Street Could Talk. Like, what are the chances? So I've known all along that this project is bigger than me, which is why, there are doors that are opening for this project that some people may not understand. It's like, wait, you're a first-time filmmaker and you're opening up at Essence Festival. I would say that, the rollout piece of this is where my PR expertise and marketing expertise came in. I was able to really, in the midst of everything, in the midst of production and wearing all of these hats, I was able to look at She Did That as my own client, for Crush Media, and think about, if this was a client, what spaces would I want this film to be in, And so I could really say that, all those years of doing PR, all those years of building other people's brands, I was really able to take those skills and apply it to what I know is probably one of my, the highlights of my career. I do hope that, and I do know that there will be more work that kind of like defines my career. But like right now, this is the most important thing that I have ever created. Yeah, I've just been applying, all these years of doing PR to this film and thinking about where it needs to be. We just recently did a partnership with JP Morgan Chase where the film was screened in 2 of their Chase branches, Atlanta and Oakland. And it was literally the very first time that they have ever screened a film in a Chase branch. Like, wow. They opened up the branch after hours and they reconfigured their lobby into like a theater. And
how did you even get them to say yes to that? Like, that's huge.
So this is where it's really important as an entrepreneur to build relationships, not only with fellow entrepreneurs, but with people who are inside of corporations or inside of organizations that could help you on your journey. So I had a relationship with a woman at Chase, Black woman who does marketing. She has been, a supporter and follower of the blog for years. And, I ran into her initially, I think, at Curl Fest, which is another, Black Girl Magic event. And when we were talking about the film, we were in a space where we were looking for brand partners. And she was like, okay, let me see what I could do. And she was helping me and trying to connect me with other people. But then there came an opportunity for her to align Chase with the film. One of the big topics that we talk about in the film is the disparities and lack of funding and resource and financial resources for Black women entrepreneurs. When we look at the stats of the money that we're getting to build, businesses that are successful compared to what a white male may get for a startup that was failed, like the numbers are, they're disappointing and they're sobering, and it makes you really feel like, okay, what can we do to change this? And so Chase is launching some initiatives that are designed to help women of color who are building brands and building businesses but need financial resources. So the opportunity to align with this film, have, this screening and this post conversation in their branches was mutually beneficial. Like, we're through the film connecting Black women entrepreneurs with Chase, to continue the conversation of how they can finance their businesses. And in return, Chase is now aligned with and connecting with and building relationships with, different Black women entrepreneurs that could potentially be their small business client. If there's anything that I could say to anyone who has a dream or an idea or a business, just make sure that the tribe that you're building also includes people who can advocate for you from the inside, because there are so many successful Black women in corporate America. I mean, I know that entrepreneurship is, it's glamorous right now. It's the direction a lot of people are going in. But let's not forget about the sisters who are inside of these corporations who are making decisions. and cutting checks and advocating for women like me and projects like She Did that are, you know, they're not just doing us a favor, like we're helping them in their role by giving them access to these Black women entrepreneurs and alignment. But, you know, they're also helping us to push the film further. Get those people inside who could also advocate for you and speak for you when you're not in the room.
That is so important. I think it also goes to show that I think we all have roles, right? Like your role may never be working in the corporate setting, but your role as an entrepreneur could be helping connect the dots for that other Black woman who is in the corporate setting. You know what I mean? So I feel like sometimes a lot of us who are creatives, especially, well, I don't want to speak for everyone. I'll say for myself, sometimes you doubt whether you're in the right role, but you don't even realize that you could be the what's the word? Like the pathway for the two roles. You know what I mean? Like you can be that connector, which is something I just want people to remember, that even if you're not in that corporate world, or even if you are, there still can be ways that these two worlds can coexist. Last question about She Did That before we wrap up, Renae, is thinking about your team. I would only hope that you were not doing everything by yourself, right? Thinking about what makes a film successful, especially because you're a first-time filmmaker, who were the people that were really integral to helping this project come together?
Oh my gosh. So my team is amazing. This team of people, you know, that came together. I mean, because there were different versions of it. You don't always end with the people that you started with, right? But the team that is in place really has been a huge blessing. This film itself has taught me so many lessons in vulnerability. You know, for years I was doing PR. It was my comfort zone. I was the expert. You know, I was the person that brands and people came to when they needed advice or counsel. Now, as a new filmmaker, what I know is that I enjoy and I have a passion and a talent for telling Black women's stories, because I've been doing it through PR, I've been doing it through the blog, but to do it through the medium of film, that's a whole new animal. It's like a whole new lane. And I had to go into this knowing that there were going to be times where I had to lean on and lean into this team that I built. And I had to build a team that I really trusted. So, you know, just to shout out some of the people on the team, Ayana Barber is our supervising producer. She was on this project from day one, believed in it from day one, you know, came to the table with a lot of great experience, you know, working on projects for, you know, like the Netflixes of the world, but really wanted to pour her talent into sharing these stories of Black women entrepreneurs. Trezana McClendon, who is also a dear friend of mine. She's our supervising story producer. She has, you know, in her career, she's won an Emmy Award for the work that she did on the Steve Harvey Show. She's worked on Real Housewives of Atlanta. She has worked on a series of reality shows. But, you know, to have someone like her with that much experience, that much expertise, you know, want to pour into this project, not just because we're friends, but because she believes in these stories and believes that, you know, they need to be shared with the masses, is a huge blessing. We have Brittany Stallworth. She's our story producer, and she's the one who connected us to her husband, Darnell Stallworth, who is the editor and the motion graphics designer. So, like, literally, each of these people like bring their own special, you know, unique brand of storytelling to the table. But they all have all this great experience, like doing other things. It's not like, because this is an independent film, I had to cut corners on the caliber of talent that I brought on. But what was really important and what was common with each of them, like no matter what they've worked on before, no matter what's on their resumes prior to this project, is that they all truly believed in these Black women's stories and the need for them to be told in a beautiful way.
I love it. And I love when you, like, you know, just making the connections, because when you invest in the people, they'll invest in you too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, yes.
So thinking about your journey and all that you've accomplished to date, Renae, what do you think was the biggest personal lesson that you learned about like what Renae is capable of?
Through this film, and I'm going to mention the film because to date, it's like the biggest thing I've done in my career, where I was betting on myself. What I learned is that I could really do anything I put my mind to. Once you've been assigned, something like this by God, like he's not going to plant this seed or give you an idea that he's not also going to give you the resources to see all the way through. I've learned that whatever I put my mind to, I can do. I've learned, the power of having this tribe and this team of amazing people behind me that I can trust that, will guide me in the areas that may not be my expertise, may not be, skills that are in my wheelhouse. And that's a pretty good feeling because now it kind of feels like, you know what? You could pivot in your career. And as long as you're you have the right intentions, like all of the work that I have done, from PR to the blog and now to telling Black women's stories, like it all goes back to being of service to Black women. And as long as I am able to tell Black women's stories, I don't know what the medium is going to be, later in my career. I'd love to do another film. The future of this film is really bright. We're having some conversations surrounding finding a home for the film, so that people can view it outside of the screening. So those blessings are unfolding. But really, I know that I am here to tell Black women's stories, particularly Black women entrepreneurs, because I think we're in a space, where people are seeing like the glory of what we're doing, but they don't understand the story and the challenges and, all of the obstacles that we face. So I really want to be the one to kind of pull the curtain back, so to speak, on what we're doing, but also how we're doing it.
It seems like listening to that calling, that personal calling, I think you mentioned that in the beginning of the episode, knowing that funeral director, that was not your calling, right? You definitely had a unique gift that you had to nurture outside of what other people's dreams were, right? I think that's something that we all can take away, is that nurture that individual fire within us all.
As hard as it may be, right? Because I think that a lot of times we get caught up in the trappings of what an opportunity could be, whether it's the financial or, it looking good on paper. I encourage people to look beyond those things and think about what is it going to feel like for you to do that? Like, are you going to love it? Are you going to be passionate about it? Are you going to be able to keep going even when the times are challenging or even when you're doubting yourself? Like how you talked about, your situation this morning, but you pushed through, you called a friend, he was able to give you a little bit of fuel for, to keep going. These are all things that are much more challenging to do if you don't really enjoy the work. And we spend so much of our lives working, like, why not do something that you love? And when I say do something that you love, I don't want to say it in this overly romanticized way where I'm implying that every single day you're going to be like smiling and happy, because even when you're doing work that you love, there are going to be challenges and obstacles. But I think that if you really love it and you're committed to it and you're passionate about it, those are the things that are going to get you through those challenging times, because they will happen.
So let's go to our lightning round. This part of the interview, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to just tell me the first word that comes to mind, and we're sticking with our whole dreams and drive metaphor, okay?
Okay.
All right. The first word is park.
Drive.
Reverse.
When I think about reverse, I think about, sometimes we look at taking steps backwards, whether it's personally or professionally, but not realizing that those couple of steps back could really propel you to another place that you never imagined that you would go.
Okay. Neutral.
Sometimes in life, in pursuing your dreams, like neutral, you're kind of being still a little bit. Like you're not, that would be park. Am I using the wrong?
It doesn't, whatever comes to mind, girl, whatever comes to mind.
Okay, I'm like, wait a minute. But when I think about neutral, I think that sometimes we have to honor that space where we're not necessarily moving fast forward or backwards, but we're kind of like in this moment. And sometimes things aren't moving at lightning speed, but they're happening the way they're supposed to.
And last but not least, drive.
Drive is when you are like in this space where you're ready to move whatever it is that you're doing forward. And it doesn't have to be, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be like 90 miles per hour. You have to be able to be comfortable driving at the pace that works for you at the time. There will be times in our lives where we are driving, full speed ahead. And there's some times where we are driving the speed limit or under, but as long as we're moving forward, that's all that matters.
Yep. And I think that, I always tell myself, you can't covet someone else's life or you can't covet someone else's journey because you don't know about the speed bumps. You don't know about all the unseen hurdles and challenges that person has gone through. So you got to just really focus on your journey.
Yes. Absolutely.
So last thing, Renae, can you tell us, if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So what are 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
Faith. Mm-hmm. Faith in yourself and your abilities to get yourself from point A to B. Faith in, your resources and the people around you, who are helping you, who may be, cheering you on the side. So faith is first and foremost. I would say resilience, because the drive may not always be pretty. The drive may not always be inspiring even. You may have those times on that drive where you're going through a storm. But you have to have resilience and know that you can get through it and get to the other side. And, even though you're driving through a storm for a couple hours, the sun will come out again. And the third thing would be support. We kind of make things more challenging for ourselves when we try to do everything alone. I know that there were times in my career where, I was a solopreneur and I was doing everything alone. I would definitely say that through She Did That, I was reminded of the power of having support, the power of having a team of people around you to help you go further. And it's just like a road trip. Like if you got your girls, in the truck and you have this person who is your co-pilot on the right of you and people in back, you guys can switch off. And it might be, a part of the trip where you're tired and you need to like rest your eyes or rest your mind a bit and not be behind the steering wheel. You have people in that car who can keep things moving when you need to rest or when you need to, get from behind the wheel. Have a team, have some support if you can.
Thank you so much, Renae. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can find you online if they want to connect and learn more about you and She Did That?
Absolutely. My personal social handle is I am Renae Bluitt, and that's I am RENAE BLUITT. The film can be found on Instagram at She Did That Film. We have some screenings coming up this year. I'm so excited to kick off the 2019 screening tour. We're going to be kicking off in Chicago with Lovey on January 30th. And we're really excited about that. So please follow us on social for updates about those screenings, because I'd love to see as many people who are listening to Dreams and Drive in the room.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 195 with Renae. I hope that you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you love this episode, you know what I'm going to ask you. Please share it with a friend. You can share on Instagram stories, via Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, via text, whatever. But please make sure you're tagging us and please make sure that you're following us. You can find us at Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive Drive as well. Don't forget to book your free career and resume consultation with Tristan over at Layfield Resume Consulting. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/Layfield. That's dreamsanddrive.com/Layfield. You can also get all the information on today's show notes. Just visit dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 195. I want to give a shout out to everyone who's subscribing and who's leaving reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts. I truly do appreciate it. I want to read this latest review from Kimberly over at Gifted Brown Girls, and she says, "Where do I start? Renae is a gifted storyteller. I listen to several episodes a day while I'm at work, and I take a lot of notes. The guests she brings on all have great energy and knowledge that can be implemented right away. There are many reasons that keep us from driving, but you only need one to get you moving on the highway. Thank you, Renae, for pushing past any fears and giving us quality content consistently. Much love, Kimberly." Thank you so much, Kimberly. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate you always making sure to connect and always making sure to engage. It does not go unnoticed. If you want to hear your review read on the next episode of Dreams and Drive, you have to leave one. So head on over to Apple Podcasts, click on write a review, leave us a rating, and then just help us tell other people why they need to listen or help them learn about what you guys are getting from each episode. Remember, we still have Dreams and Drive gear available if you want a crew neck or a hoodie. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. We also have some podcast pitching templates available as well. And if you want to be part of our Dreams and Drive newsletter and get our weekly online newsletter, The Keys, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. Guys, we are 5 episodes away from episode 200. That's crazy to me, but at the same time, it's not crazy because if you're consistently putting in the work, you're going to consistently get results. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 196. Bye, guys.